Hi everyone, welcome back to an Aspiring Medics tutorial. Today we're talking about how to approach MMI stations that are discussing specific personal qualities. So these are the objectives for today's session. We're going to start by offering a little bit of background about the kinds of personal qualities that are required in medicine and those that are likely to be discussed in an MMI. We will then come up with a suggested approach about how we can go about illustrating or demonstrating a specific personal quality, particularly by recounting our own personal experiences. And lastly, we'll put that into practice with a scenario and also look at some different types of scenarios as well. So speaking about the kind of personal qualities required in medicine, I would identify four broad categories, especially in terms of what's likely to be discussed in an MMI station. So first and foremost, resilience and problem solving. Now, resilience refers to your ability to withstand adverse circumstances, overcome challenges, and essentially come back or bounce back from any difficult time. Next, we have leadership and team working abilities. So this is about how you work in the team, support your fellow team members, and identify struggling team members. By far, these are the most likely to be discussed explicitly in an MMI station, but the other two that we should also talk about are empathy and compassion. So this involves attentively listening to patients and listening to their expectations, just so we can offer the highest kind of individualized, tailored form of care. And also your planning and organizational skills. So showing some effective planning to reach a desired goal, anticipating challenges ahead of time, and also having contingency plans in place. So in the event that you're asked to demonstrate a specific personal quality, perhaps in the form of tell me about a time that you demonstrated X, I believe your response should have ultimately three big components. The first one is an overview of the situation and the context. Now, this is simply the facts about what was the situation and the experience, and who did it involve, what was the main problem or the challenge here. So this is simply the details and just enough detail that the listener needs to follow your thought process and your response. Next, and probably the really meaty bit, is you thinking out loud about your considerations and how you approach the situation. So with the problem at hand, what were the possible ways in which you could have behaved? And what would have been the consequences of going down each of these paths? What would have been the sort of pros and cons of going down each of these paths? And ultimately, what was the course of action that you took and what drove you to take that decision? This will obviously make a lot more sense when we go into the examples, but it's worth bearing in mind this is the kind of process we want to follow. Lastly, there's the element of reflection. So this is where we look back at the considerations and our approach and our thought process at the time, and we're thinking about the specific course of action that we took. Well, did that resolve the problem at hand? And were there any benefits to drawing on this personal quality and implementing it in the situation? And what were the things that went well, as well as what could have been done differently? Now, I know that that might have been a bit difficult to process, but these three elements should come across in your response. And if you do find it useful, we can definitely suggest a STAR model, which is an SDARR model. So let's go over this as well. And the S here will stand for the situation, which is again, just the facts about what is the location, the people, and the context. The task refers to what were your responsibilities involved in this specific situation. Action is just about how did you handle the situation and what kind of personal quality did that demonstrate. Lastly, we're looking at the first of the two R's, which is results. So what did your actions achieve and what was the feedback or what was the response to your actions? And lastly, there has to be the element of reflection where we're speaking more explicitly about the quality at hand, talking about how things went, as well as what are the strengths of possessing this quality and applying it to the situation at hand. So I hope the STAR mnemonic is being useful as well. So we've talked about the background and covered what are the personal qualities required in medicine. We've also talked about how we might demonstrate a personal quality by recounting our personal experience. So let's have a go at applying this model at a practice scenario. So let's take this case where we're being asked to talk about a time that we faced an obstacle and how we bounced back from it. So think about how you want to structure your response, but just keep in mind the big components, the three big components that we talked about that your response should ideally include. So the main things I would like to encourage you to speak about in your response would be, first and foremost, the situation itself, which is again just the facts about who was involved, where did it occur, and why. The second and the meaty bit again is the approach. So what made this difficult? In a situation about resilience, you want to talk about what was the specific problem or what was particularly challenging or difficult in this scenario. And so what were your considerations and what were the kind of things that you were juggling in determining how to respond? Third is the action itself. So how do you deal with the situation? Was it a problem that you could solve? Was it something that you could work around by finding an alternative way? Or if you weren't able to do anything about it, did you just really have the grit and the toughness to persist despite it? And lastly, but probably most importantly, there is the element of reflection, where we're speaking more explicitly about resilience as a concept and talking about how did it help you overcome the obstacle. And perhaps this can open into a wider discussion about how is this relevant to a potential career in medicine. So whether you go down the star mnemonic or not, remember that you really want to try and include the situation itself, really think out loud about your approach and action, and also include an element of reflection in your response. Another way you might be asked about personal qualities is by being placed in a specific situation itself, where you're given a scenario, much like this one. So let's have a go at implementing the same principle with this scenario. So you are the lead on the joint project involving several other team members. One of the team members, Adam, has not attended the previous 3 meetings or contributed to project work. The other team members are frustrated about this and have asked you to speak with them. How would you approach the situation? So we've clearly been placed in a situation already, and we have a scenario at hand. Think about how you want to structure your response and in addressing the specific personal qualities about teamwork and leadership. So again, the main components to your response would be to identify what are the key considerations here. So we have the expectations of our fellow team members. There is a project deadline that needs to be met. And there is the relationship with Adam himself. So whether that can be compromised if we go about this the wrong way. We also want to identify what are the biggest factors here that should inform our next steps. And so for you as a team leader, your biggest priority should be a fair distribution of work, but at the same time being open-minded in that Adam might be struggling to fulfill his commitments because of something else that might be going on in his life. So in terms of how you put this together, and that will inform the next steps. So that's step 3, where we perhaps mention that sensitivity would be key in dealing with the situation. So I would like to speak with Adam on a one-to-one basis, seeking a local resolution to the difficult scenario at hand. And this would be non-confrontational. It will also allow Adam the space to explain himself. We lastly want to conclude with a plan where we're understanding Adam's reasons for not being able to participate, and we offer ways in which the team can support him and allow him to contribute effectively to the team. So in this case, we really demonstrated the qualities of teamwork and leadership and supporting fellow teammates rather than speaking about it explicitly. But of course, that can be a wider discussion that shows up at the end of the MMI stage. So just wrapping up some top tips, I would say show and then tell. It is likely that you will have to speak about the specific personal quality that's being talked about in the station, but try and give an honest experience that is not exaggerated, where you're really getting down into the fact and thinking out loud, and then you can come into speaking about it more explicitly and talking about its relevance to medicine. This SDA star model is very helpful model to fall back on, especially when recounting your personal experiences. And you really want to ensure that you're offering just enough detail, because the emphasis is really on the quality itself and what its relevance is to medicine, rather than the nitty-gritties of a personal experience, for example. And regardless of whether you are asked to recount your experience or you're placed in a scenario, as we just looked at both possibilities, expect follow-up questions. So just questions about why you think this particular quality is important or relevant as a doctor. That would be very fair game. You can certainly read more about that on our website, www.theaspiringmedics.co.uk. So that's the objectives for the session covered. We've talked about the personal qualities that are required in medicine and also offered a template, the big three components that should exist in your response when discussing personal quality. And we've also looked at the two different kinds of scenarios by looking at resilience as well as teamwork. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you and good luck.
To unlock the rest of the videos in this category, make sure to purchase the Aspiring Medics online interview course. We have over 50 videos covering 7 categories, including COVID-19, the NHS, and medical ethics. Head on over to www.theaspiringmedics.co.uk today to ace your med school interview.